And I think just in the nick of time, that is the end of the Stereophonics, and Jonathan is on the line. Jonathan, sorry, it was meant to be. It would be all messed up like this. We haven't spoken for ages. How are you? You're back.
The wonders of modern technology, Richie.
You're sounding great, dulcet tones and all of that. Look, because of that messing around, we'll dispense with the pleasantries for a minute. What have you made of everything that's been said in the last couple of days? We heard today that, which we suspected, well, we knew anyway, that there wouldn't be any more negotiations in Greece, that they'd be off for another election. Jonathan, what have you made of it?
Well, 2 years ago, if we can start there very briefly, every politician on the face of the earth practically told us that Greece would be okay. So they bailed them out with a lot of money, taxpayers' money. And then a year ago, every politician said Greece would be okay. So they bailed them out again with another load of taxpayers' money. And where are we now? Greece is toast. Greece is bankrupt. We've known it for years, and yet these politicians have been flapping around pretending that they can solve the problem. You cannot solve an insoluble problem. Where we are right now is that clearly the people have spoken. Well done to the Greek people for voting for politicians who have stood up in the market square and said, we're going to rip up the euro. We're going to leave the shackles of the euro because it's drowning us. We were in a straitjacket. And sure enough, they voted for these people. So the PASOK and the New Democracy do no longer have a majority. Instead, you could say the libertarians, the people who are actually for the people, are holding the power. And quite simply, they're going to have to have a new election next month, and the likelihood is that the people who say we're going to rip up the Maastricht Treaty, which created the euro, they're the people going to get into power. Greece will leave the euro. They will go back to the drachma. Greece will therefore become far more competitive. They will start selling holidays again, and they will actually start growing again. At the minute, they've lost 25% of the economy because of these politicians.
Now, what about those who say, Jonathan, that if they do devalue if they revert to the drachma, which of course will be devalued, what about those who say that, well, no, the cost of goods in Greece will be extraordinary, there'll be widespread hunger, unemployment, nothing will be any different than what the austerity measures are causing at the moment?
Do you know, that's an amazing thing. You're absolutely correct.
That's what they say,
the scaremonger... Huh?
Sorry to interrupt you. Yes, that's what they say. It's not what I'm saying. It's what they say.
Yes, indeed. That's what the scaremongers are saying, and that's what they've been saying for the last few years. And they've been wrong every time they've said it. Look at Iceland. Iceland told the bankers where to go in 2009. They said, you've loaned us this money recklessly. We can't pay it back. We are bankrupt as an economy. They defaulted on the loans. And before they did that, every politician, every banker, every central banker said Iceland would be an economic pariah for a generation. 3 years later, Richie, Iceland is one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. And indeed, they're borrowing again on global markets. So it's absolute nonsense what those scaremongers, have been saying for the last few years, and they've been getting it wrong, and they've been raping the Greek people of their wealth and of their economy, and they're wrong today. Greece needs to leave the euro, leave the straitjacket, and become more competitive. It's the only way they can grow out of their dire situation.
Jonathan, is it coming to an end? Because everybody in Ireland is watching this very closely, and the referendum is in Ireland at the end of the month. You wouldn't know there was a referendum. No, how do I phrase this a bit differently? You wouldn't know there was two sides to the coin in Ireland, because both the coalition government in Ireland, as you know, and the opposition, Fianna Fáil, are basically insisting that the Irish people vote yes on this. It's only sporadic voices saying vote no, but the Irish people have a history of voting no in referendums, only for the question to be asked of them again in a different way.
Well, maybe they do, but the reality is, look at the facts. Enda Kenny, before he was elected, he said he was going to tell Europe where to go.
That's right.
He said he was going to renege on the loans, renege on the deals, and he was going to get Ireland out of the mire. What did he do? He did a 180-degree about-turn, and he signed exactly where Brussels wanted him to sign. And it's interesting you say that the two major parties are continuation of the status quo. That's exactly the same in Greece with PASOK and New Democracy, and Spain, where they've got the exact same problems. And indeed, you look at any country in Europe, you find that the incumbent major parties are those who want the status quo. Well, it's funny that, because let's face it, the major parties have had it between themselves for the last 6 decades. It's either been Party A or Party B. When it's not been Party B, it's been Party A. They're two sides of the same coin. They call themselves socialists or Republicans.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they're two sides of the same coin. They're saying the exact same thing.
You know, Noel in the Costa Blanca, Noel Lynch has said Greece shouldn't have been admitted from the start. Good for Greece, out of the Euro. Start from scratch, says Noel. Thanks for that, Noel. Fintan O'Toole is an eloquent Irish journalist who writes in the Irish Times. I was reading him today in the Irish Times, Jonathan, and he was saying, look, I'm paraphrasing what he was saying, but what he was getting at is, you know, you'd have to wonder why senior European politicians haven't said to Germany and Germany's financial institutions, hey, listen, hang on a second. You talk about other people taking risks with their money. Well, you took risks as well. And the fact that you're exposed by 600 billion, whatever it is, pounds or euro or dollars, you have to accept that you took a certain amount of risk. When you gave all of that money to Ireland all those years ago, and you gave it without the stringent maybe conditions that you should have insisted on at the time, you've got to now accept some of the responsibility for that. That's not unfair, that, is it, Jonathan?
No, absolutely. And that, you've got to the nub of the issue. That is the reason why Brussels has been trying to kick the can down the road for the last few years, because the French and the German banks would lose colossal sums of money because they have loaned recklessly. To all these countries. I mean, it's an absolute, utter amazing situation that for 10 years, these guys in France and Germany, and indeed in the City of London, were lending to the likes of Greece and Spain and Portugal and Italy and Ireland at the same rate of interest that they were lending to Germany. Germany actually has an economy which works. The other countries didn't. It was all fallacy. It was illusory. It was based on increased debt, property speculation. We all know about that. But there was no way on earth that these loans were ever going to be paid back. The reason why they made the loans was because, A, the individuals would get massive bonuses, and
yeah.
B, they knew that the governments would bail them out. We need to stop bailing out the bankers. Once we stop bailing out the bankers, in other words, letting these countries default on the loans, that's when we can start growing the European economy.
Because the austerity that they want to inflict on the people of Ireland and Spain, and this is, I mean, I've had some heavy, bloody rows on this programme, Jonathan, with other journalists, not economists, but journalists from Greece and Holland, and I've had German journalists on this show, and I argue with them, because I say to them, I say, look, I'm not an economist. You are a journalist who writes about the economy, therefore you have an advantage over me. But what you can't explain to me is how those austerity measures could ever bring anything about other than ruin, how there could ever be any growth within. I mean, what's the IMF say? They say that a return to growth in Spain by 2018. So that's laughable, that. You don't have to be a fool to know there couldn't be.
Yeah, well, you have to understand that the IMF is Wall Street. The IMF is the City of London. It's the banking cartel. Whether it's the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, they're all of the same philosophy, which is lend, get massive bonuses, build their empires, and then rape and pillage the countries subsequently, because there's no way on earth that they'll be able to pay back these loans. I mean, think of even so-called wealthy United Kingdom. We also, as everyone knows, had a massive property bubble. We're still in the bubble, apart from indeed in Northern Ireland, where prices are down over 50%. We're still in the bubble in the UK. Why? Because we slashed interest rates and we bailed out the banks. Well, there's no way on earth that all the borrowers in England, in Scotland, in Wales, and Northern Ireland, there's no way on earth that these people can pay back those loans. So when I talk about rape and pillaging, what I mean is wait for the hundreds of thousands and possibly over 1 million home repossessions by the banks. That's what we mean by raping and pillaging. And on a grander, a bigger scale, that's what's happening in Greece, in Spain, and all these other countries. Their main state assets are being taken to pay for all these loans which can never be repaid. It is an astounding situation. When will the people in the other countries like the UK, like Ireland, like Germany, like France, when will they realise what's going on here? That we're simply bailing out these banks. We're not bailing out the countries. If we were bailing out the countries, for example, when Ireland got its 80 billion euro bailout, it wouldn't have been 17 billion from its state pension fund.
Yeah, that's right.
We're bailing out the banks. We're not bailing out the countries. There's no way on earth.
Sorry, Jonathan. I love Steve Keen's. To be fair to Steve Keen, an argument he made to me was that what should have happened was that people were bailed out, and that's what you mean by countries. People should have been bailed out. Bail out the population. Help the population pay off their debts and their mortgages. That would have been a way to go about it. But of course, he said that anybody saying that was quickly marginalised, and they weren't given the opportunity to say it. Now I've got to ask you, because messages are coming in thick and fast, and one of them is, Jonathan, if I'm in Spain and I'm retired here and I've got a few grand in the bank, should I worry about Spain coming out of the euro? And that applies, of course, to any expat who's living in Greece right now, and they might have 10 or 20 grand in a bank in Greece. What should they do? It's a tough question, isn't it?
Well, it's not. It's a very straightforward and entirely appropriate question. Look, there are hundreds of thousands of folk in Greece right now who are, whenever they can, they're going to their banks and they're sending their euros into German banks because they know what's coming. To me, it's an inevitability that Greece will leave the euro. And when that happens, there will be a domino effect. Spain will leave the euro, Portugal, Ireland, maybe even Italy, which is the third largest economy in the eurozone. Yes, look, the Spanish stock market is back to 2003 levels. The banks are now being nationalised. Of course, the Spanish banking system is kaput. It's toast. In 2006, Spanish banks loaned to property developers such that property developers could develop the same amount of property as in Germany, France, and the Netherlands combined. That's how bad the property situation and therefore the banking situation is in Spain. So yes, I think people should be concerned in the short term for the value of their savings in euros, and yes, it would be prudent to consider moving it either into German euros or indeed, as we've been advising our clients over the last year, to move out of euros full stop and into the US dollar. And actually, the euro has weakened from $1.50 to 127 over the last year. So that was a very good call, and we see the euro going down further over the next 6 months.
Now, Ellis has been listening. He's an international businessman, and he says leaving the euro will be the greatest thing for southern Europe since they started breeding donkeys, is they will have to get used to eating homegrown produce and using homemade goods, which will boost the national economy. Imported goods will be more expensive, but once as they start to generate an income, they will have more disposable income than sitting there waiting for their economy to grind to a halt. Economies grow from activity. Austerity for the political will to hold on to this has failed. The currency experiment will only ever lead to inactivity, waiting around for more handouts from the richer parts of Europe. You can't call these loans, you can't call these things loans, since there is absolutely no hope of them paying them back, says Ellis. He's a businessman who trades around the world. Can't argue with that.
Look, he's absolutely correct. And look, the big picture is this, Richie. For 30 or 40 years, we've had a debt explosion in the West and indeed around the world. We've had a credit rise which has boosted property prices, boosted employment, boosted the public sector, boosted everything. We've had an amazing party. Do you know what? There comes a point when the debt can no longer rise. And we started that process in 2008. And 2008, everyone said, that's it, that's the biggest crash in history. Well, actually it was, but I'm afraid to say it was only the hors d'oeuvre. The main course is still to come, because when the likes of Spain goes under, as it will be a multiple of when Lehman Brothers went under in 2008. Thus, we are now in an era, 20 or 30 years of deleveraging, of falling debts. And clearly, we've had the biggest party in history. We're now having the biggest hangover in history. People are just going to have to wake up to that reality and also take action, because no one's going to bail us out. We're not bankers.
No.
We have to take action and stop listening to the bankers and the politicians, because they are not in it for us. They are in it for themselves.
Jonathan's website is jonathandaviswm.com. He's a highly ethical and renowned manager of wealth. He's an economist as well. You can catch him on the BBC regularly. He's a good friend of ours. He will be a good friend of ours. Jonathan, I left it too long. It's good to chat with you again. It's great to get that varying opinion and that advice as well. And I think people should take that advice pretty seriously about moving their money. In the meantime, we'll say goodbye on that. I'll be talking to you tomorrow morning, and we'll talk again very soon. Thanks again. And he's gone. Coincidentally, he's gone anyway. Right, that was Jonathan Davis. Always good to have him on the programme. Now...